Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon. We are recording this on May 19th of 2014. And I'll tell you what, Ramon, yesterday was Sunday here, and I was sitting there in the living room, and it had been, lightly raining a little bit during the day, and all of a sudden, it just got dark, and the clouds parted. The clouds opened up, and I don't think I've ever seen it rain so hard. I mean, I honestly don't think I mean, I had water pouring off the valleys in my roof. I had water running so fast off of my roof that it was shooting straight over the top of the gutter. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I've never seen it rain that hard here. It must have rained and it only lasted for, less than 10 minutes. But it must have dropped. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 3/4 of an inch of rain in less than 10 minutes.
It sounds like it.
It was freaky, and of course, that stuff always happens synchronously, because I was contemplating some pretty heavy topics inside, and it just kind of freaked me out a little bit. I was like, okay, God, and what's your message here? So, anyways, I missed it last week, but I want to pick this back up and continue doing this. The tarot card for the week, and this is for the week of May 25th through the 30th, right? Through the 31st, excuse me. And I pulled the 9 of Discs for this week. Now, the 9 of Discs that card has to do with a gain, a profit, a substantial amount of growth in a certain. Now, when I look at discs, I see those as more of knowledge instead of material wealth, depending on the reading and how it's directed. But to me, the discs represent true wealth, which is knowledge, and so I'm kind of picking up out of this next week. There's going to be some substantial information that comes out, some substantial things that people will learn. But it also, that 9 of Discs also comes at a bit of a cost. There's a price that's paid due to maybe something else being neglected or overlooked in the process of that growth. So there you go, guys. I don't know how this stuff plays out on the world stage, but I think that there's some gains that are going to be made, and will also maybe at the sacrifice of something else. So I'm going to keep my heads up for this and see if I can correlate it with anything that happens out there in the world. So how's Japan treating you, Ramon?
Well, Japan's treating me pretty good. This morning I had a strange dream. It's funny because I have these dreams a lot. I was seeing a UFO, and in the dream I was with my older brother. Make a long story short, I was talking to this, it had to be like at least a 20-foot size hippopotamus. and I was talking to him, but I can't remember what we were talking about, but it felt important, and it felt like it was the second time I ever talked to him. So for people in Europe, I would say like 5 meters or something like that. But anyway, that was
like
my
elephant size.
No, he was like standing up straight. It was like humanoid. He was humanoid, but had a hippo's face. And in the dream, I just kept thinking like Egyptian, one of those Egyptian gods.
Right.
But he had come in a spaceship. That was the strange thing. It was like an acorn-shaped kind of spaceship. But anyway, that's a dream, not reality. Well, it's one type of reality.
Well, it depends on what level of reality you're talking about. Cause, I guess it's in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah, but I have to say that way. I don't want people to go say, "Whoa, he said that he met this giant hippo in real life." So, Anyway, we have an amazing guest that both me and you had the pleasure of meeting, and it's funny because it's such a small world. I actually end up meeting somebody who knows her personally. I don't want to use the person's name, but this is an amazing guest, and I had the pleasure of watching her at the conference and gave such an amazing talk. And for me, she got into something that a lot of people don't get into when it comes to the whole UFO scene. And we'll ask her all those questions and get into it. So, Tom, who do we have?
We have Paola Harris with us tonight. Jeez, spit it out, Tom. Paola Harris is an Italo-American photojournalist and investigative reporter in the field of extraterrestrial related phenomena research. She is also a widely published freelance writer, especially in Europe. She has studied extraterrestrial related phenomena since 1979 and is on personal terms with many of the leading researchers in the field. From 1980 to 86, she assisted Dr. J. Allen Hynek with his UFO investigations and has interviewed many top military witnesses concerning their involvement in the government truth embargo. In 1997, Ms. Harris met and interviewed Colonel Corso in Roswell, New Mexico, and became a personal friend and confidant. She was instrumental in having his book, The Day After Roswell, for which she wrote the preface for, translated into Italian. She returned to Roswell in the summer of 2003 for the American debut of her book, newly revised, Connecting the Dots, Making Sense of the UFO Phenomena. She lives in Rome and in Boulder, Colorado, and has a master's degree in education. She teaches history and photojournalism and online courses in exopolitics for Dr. Michael Salas Exopolitics Institute, for which she is international liaison director. Wow, my mouth is not working.
You okay today, Tom?
I don't know. The website for that is www.starworkusa.com, STARWORKS USA.com, and her website is I don't know why I have PaolaHarris.com. I don't know why I have so much trouble pronouncing your name, Paola. Paola Harris. Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio, Paola.
Listen, you guys, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm Italian. So what happens is in Italy, everybody calls me Paola, but when I moved back to the United States, I say just call me Paula. It's easier because then they'll get into Paola and everything else. So Paula is just fine.
Paula, I got it. Paula, I can say Paula.
Okay.
Oh wow! So Paula, from I know a lot of the background on you, but I'm not sure all of our listeners do. And so, what got you into UFOs in the first place?
Well, in 1979, I saw the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and concurrently, I was teaching science fiction. I have a master's in education, and teach English and high school English and history. And so I was teaching science fiction. I went to see Close Encounters. Star Wars had just come out, and I became fascinated with the last scene in Close Encounters, where Francois Truffaut has this meeting with these beings that come off the ship, and he tries to communicate with them. And in that scene, if you guys remember, there's Alan Hynek who comes out with a pipe. And looks, he because it's a cameo role, because he basically did he was the consultant on that film with Steven Spielberg. So just coincidentally, I had a wedding in Evanston, Illinois, where the Center for UFO Studies was, where Alan Hynek was. I walked in there, and there he was. He came from around the corner. I had checked in with his secretary, and she knew I spoke Italian. So what happened was, he said to me, "Do you want to work with me? Because I have so many Italian sightings and you can translate them." And from that beginning. He came down to Boulder, Colorado several times. I was trained. I had a CUFOS card. I was trained to be an investigator. I knew him until he died in 1986. So what that did for me was that showed me, unequivocally that it was real, that there was no believing in UFOs like you do in a religion, that it was fact. We had all kinds of data. And you know that Hynek was in Blue Book, so he had worked for the Air Force. And he was an astronomer who was a professor at Northwestern. So he was my greatest teacher, so I knew it was real. So when you start out like that, you can just do what I do, which is the investigative part.
Right. So what was it like actually wrapping your mind around that reality?
Well, in the beginning, it was sightings, and I wouldn't go anywhere else. Mentally, I couldn't put it in any kind of box. So when I would go with Alan and I would drive him, like in Denver, there was a meeting with some contactees, and they said they had been taken aboard and all this, and I couldn't go there. At that time, in the 1980s, I just couldn't, my mind just couldn't go there. It took me years to understand the contact part of this phenomenon. I was comfortable with just doing the nuts and bolts, just doing the sightings part and the, comparison part and all the describing part and everything. Years later, I met Colonel Philip Corso, and it changed my reality because I was the only journalist that dealt with Colonel Corso. Because I brought him to Italy on 2 occasions. He never spoke in the United States. There was a lawsuit against the book here. So knowing Colonel Corso and going into the other part of this, the contact part of it, it was a long stretch for me.
Yeah, I had a few issues with wrapping my mind around it at first myself also. And, even up till 3 years ago when Ramona and I started the show, I had a knowing within me that there was something out there and that there was a reality behind it. But I think I have to definitely understand where you're coming from about as far as the actual contact, the person-to-person contact. I had definite issues wrapping my mind around that. But I think especially with doing this radio show and having so many people explain their stories and being able to sense from them the truth of what they're saying has really made a big difference in my life, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that made a difference in my life in those days, because we just talked about the American Overseas School where I was teaching, is I had the money to bring great people over to meet the Italians, and I spent 4 days with Dr. John Mack. So, and having Dr. Mack in my house, and, he's Harvard University psychiatrist, and he's telling me about a lot of this and explaining it to me, I had to go there. And I, as I said, I had the greatest teachers. I had all the firsthand people. So when Dr. Mack began to speak, and he did it so wisely, and he did it without any judgment. In other words, he never called aliens good, bad, or indifferent. He just did it with such grace and such class. He described cases that I'd have to listen.
Mm. What was Colonel Corso like personally?
Well, I described that in my first book, Connecting the Dots. How do you speak? Making sense of the UFO phenomenon, because the man was a military. He was an army colonel who had worked in the Pentagon, and he had also done World War II as the head of intelligence in Rome. So that when I brought him to Rome, I made him walk every cobblestone in every street and tell me about his life there. And he's telling the truth, right down to the fact that he brought me on the street and told me that there had been like a nightclub there with a woman that sang in he said it was around 1940. And she had there was a white piano in the place, and explaining to me, and that this was right down near Via Veneto, and I went into the restaurant. I said, "Did this used to be a nightclub?" And did you have a white piano? And they said, go downstairs 3 floors. And sure enough, there's a white piano with all pictures of servicemen. So I was able to prove a lot of what Corso was telling me. And the fact that he did the Second World War in Italy, the fact that he had experience in intelligence, the fact that he was able to keep a secret that long, because the back engineering of alien technology, guys, is the real secret why the secret's being kept.
Right.
I mean, it's not because, of aliens or people panicking. It's just that we don't throw that stuff in the trash. So when we have these crashes, and they're not only in the United States, but all over the world, whoever retains the technology, and the technology is what they're all after, and can engineer it gets the most power. And so when Corso was working on research and development in the Pentagon, he had made a deal with General Trudeau that the last man alive would tell the truth, it would explain it. They'd have nothing to lose. So when he wrote, he didn't actually write The Day After Roswell. He had notes that Bill Burns took and wrote the book, The Day After Roswell. He wrote it from Colonel Corso's notes. And the controversy about that is that there are mistakes made about Roswell, and Colonel Corso was not at Roswell. He was at Fort Riley, Kansas, when he saw the bodies being brought. And so that there's the 1 or 2 mistakes that are in the book do not coincide with his manuscript, which he gave us in Italy, and we published it, his own manuscript called Dawn of a New Age. And it is different from The Day After Roswell and does not have any mistakes in it. So this is a really big question for people that study ufology. They really need to read that book and understand exactly what was going on, because the treasure from the UFO phenomenon is not the aliens, unfortunately, or the contact with them. It is the technology.
Right. So, go ahead, Ramon.
I was gonna say, compare America. You're being from 2 cultures. America to Italy. How do you find a difference in ufology and the way the average person is open or not open to this?
Well, first of all, let me say that even in the reporting, the media when we have a sighting over Fiumicino Airport, Leonardo da Vinci Airport, they just report it. It's no big deal. And they report it. They say there's a UFO over the airport, and and the light resembles Hesdalen. They even know about Hesdalen in Norway, where there's lights. They're very educated people. And when we have conferences, there are no T-shirts, there are no little antenna, there are no alien jewelry. We have them at universities, and we have people there that are really curious. We have professors, astronomers. When Colonel Corso came, he met doctors, he met all professionals, and nobody was selling anything. So it is quite different in the United States. It's become a commercial. What Dr. Stephen Greer says is retail ufology is very commercialized.
Yeah, I always find it strange how, for example, my parents are from Dominican Republic, and unlike you and Tom, where you guys had to wrap your mind around it, it was kind of somewhat part of our lives, because certain people in my family had experiences, and neighbors, and my dad's always seen UFOs, and it wasn't that much, even though you have some people who are more, they say they want to be more Americanized, so they don't believe in those things. That's more like old's tale or something like that. Do you, when you're talking to the American professionals, do you still find that even so many years later, they're still kind of shut down?
Well, Ramon, one of the things, I'm a teacher, so I'm always going to give people homework. One of the things I find with my own colleagues is that they don't do any reading. They don't read each other's work. And I have a library of 300 books here, and I just finished Colin Andrews' The Edge of Reality. Please buy it. And I'm just starting Tim, what's his name? Tim Good's book, Earth, an Alien Enterprise. I mean, I don't understand how they could research anything and not read each other's books. I've written 4 books, and I can connect a few dots because these people have done amazing work, and in reading it, I can have an intelligent conversation with them about their books. But that isn't the norm here in the United States very often. What we have here is everybody stays in their own little area. If you do Roswell, you only do Roswell. If you do crop circles, you only do crop circles. If you do, and America has become a stereotypical place where the alien abduction scenario and the face of the gray alien is stamped on every Facebook profile that's asked to be friends with me. And I'm going, are we nuts or something? You telling me that all there is out in the universe are little gray aliens? I mean, what is this? How about doing some reading here? and Colonel Corso told me when he was explaining to me the conclusions they had reached. He said, Paula, he said, what was it? Roswell was an extraterrestrial biological entity. And he brought the what do you call it? The autopsies with him. He said, we were more afraid of who created them. He said, they're people. And he said, they're people. He said that what's out there are various races of people that are visiting the planet for different reasons. And that's my current research. I mean, I just wrote an article this morning about the 1950s, about Italy's contacts in the 50s and 60s, where they were human-type people. And all we've got now is you stamp a little gray on something, and that's ufology in the United States.
Right.
That is so true.
I think it's just the opposite. I think the grays are probably the very small drop in the bucket.
The minority, yeah.
Absolutely. But what happened was this, that the article is really good. In fact, I'll probably send it to you. That in the 1950s, with the starting of Adamski, but Adamski wasn't the only one. We had a guy in Rome that saw the same people Adamski saw. His name was Genio Siracusa. He was on the island of Sicily under Mount Etna when he met and they're not Nordics. I mean, they're not Nordics and reptilian and grays. We've just stamped all this. They were people with blonde hair. And because in South America and Latin America, they're dark-haired and they have dark eyes. So, the thing is, we've got to be careful of stereotypes. But Eugenio Siracusa met these people with the same message that they had given Adamski in 1954, and that was, watch your nuclear capacity, watch your war economy, because you could take that same economy and you could make it a rocket economy, and it would make the same amount of money, and you guys could come and meet us. Because you'd get to the stars, you'd be able to travel among the planets. And you can make money there, too, because if you have a rocket economy, you have to invent all kinds of technical things to send rockets into space and clothing, food. I mean, and so we had a choice in the 1950s, and somewhere along the line, somebody made the choice that we were going to go into a war economy, and the messages about watching the nuclear just went down the tubes. I mean, one of the interviews I have in my book, Connecting the Dots, is with geophysicist Guy Andronic, who's on the island of Fangatofa in the Pacific. And the French did 800 H-bomb tests. And he testified to me that on 3 occasions he saw UFOs fly over the testing site because it was 3 feet of dead fish on the runways. 3 feet of dead fish, all dead coral. So you don't think somebody out there is a little nervous. Now I mentioned the French did 800 H-bomb tests. I'm not even going to tell you how many we did.
Right.
Because that was 3 times that much.
Yeah. Back to Colonel Corso real quick. Did he ever let you know that there were certain things that he would not talk about in relation to the UFO or extraterrestrial? Yeah.
Well, first of all, he had contact. The first interview I would do with him, I scrapped because I was, in those days, I was censoring stuff that I shouldn't have been censoring, because in those days, here I am at Roswell. My boss sends me. I'll tell it to you because it's all full of coincidences. And I think Ramon and Tom, if your life is full of coincidences, you're plugged into something.
Right.
Okay. So I was in Italy. I was having a terrible time with a situation. I did not want to come to America. My boss sends me over to Colorado. They're waiting for me in a van. I get to Roswell. They're supposed to be, I don't know who Colonel Corso is. I never read his book. I never saw what he looked like. And I was supposed to cover the story. And so when I got to Roswell, everybody in the world was there because it was the 50th anniversary, and Whitley Strieber and John Mack and Bud Hopkins, and everybody was there. And I went to the press club and I said, I got to do this story, but there's no place to sleep here because it's a big party. And they said, well, just open up the phone book and just call the first hotel you see. So I called the Sallyport Inn, and they told me they had a room for 3 nights, and come to find out it was a room next to Colonel Philip Corso. Okay. So right
Wow.
there.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't know that because what happened is I jumped in the car. I went over to the UFO museum. I'm standing in a crowd. I have to cover this story. There's a guy, blonde-haired guy there, and he's saying, "Oh, you're from Italy," because I had a press badge. And he said, I said, "Yeah." I said, "Is that Corso on the stage?" He said, "Yeah, that's my father." He said, "Ask him a question in Italian." And I said, "Oh my God, does I know?" I said, "I don't think so." And he pushed me into the crowd. And I had to raise my hand, and so I asked Colonel Corso about the Santilli footage. I don't know if you're aware of the alien autopsy footage.
Right.
Yeah.
Famous alien autopsy that we had in Europe too. And Corso just said, "Look," he said, "I am familiar with the part of the autopsy footage where they peel off the." What do you call it? The cover over the being's eye, and then there's a pupil. He said, because that cover, he said, I had that in research and development, and that became a night screening device. That's just a lens. He said, we used to walk up and down the halls of the Pentagon and could see the furniture with that thing. So, then he said to me, "I got to talk to you." And I said, "I don't know how to get to you, because all these people are around you." And later on, he's walking out of his room, which is right next to me. And so I said, "Okay." I said, "Can you give me an interview?" And you'll love this but I didn't print it. And he said, "Yes." He said, "I will tell you what I did in the Pentagon." He said, he said, "I want to tell you about an encounter I had with an extraterrestrial biological being, not the typical gray. This was a different kind of being." He said in Red Canyon, he said, when I was in New Mexico, when I was the head of a missile battalion, he said, "I am convinced," he said, "that one of the Roswell craft landed there in 1957. He said, "I saw it as I was flying over with the plane," he said, "and then I took my Jeep, went over there, and there was this craft appearing and disappearing," he said. And he said, I thought it was solid, and then it would disappear. So I threw some cactus under it, and it squashed the cactus. And he said, from the left-hand side of my vision, out of a cave came this being. And he said he wore a headband with a red stone in the middle for an interface. And I said, "I've never heard of that." And he said, "We have those in the Pentagon." And I thought, oh my God, there's a whole other race that we don't even know about. And then he walked over. He said that he pulled out his gun. This is Corso for you. He's Italian. He pulled out his gun. He also had a knife. He pulled out his gun, and he said to the being, "Friend or foe?" And the being said, "Neither." The being didn't say this. It was all telepathic. And the being said, "Please shut down your radars because I can't take off." And Corso had told me that they were instructed to shut their radars down. I didn't realize this because the radars are what brought down the craft, the very powerful radar. And he hadn't done it. So the being said, "If you would shut down your radar, I can take off." And Corso said, "Well, what do you have to offer me?" And the being telepathically said to him, "A new world if you can take it."
Mm.
And then he writes it on a napkin. And I got the napkin. And I'm going, "I'm not going to print this." I said, "Colonel, I can't print this." I said, "They're going to think you're crazy. I can't print this." And I did not print it until after he died, which goes to show you that I had a hard time wrapping my mind around it. Because later when he came to Italy, we talked about the details of what he back engineered, how he took envelopes full of money. There was no paper trail. The companies he went to, that he wanted a competitive edge for the Army, because I'm sure since it was Army Air Force in 1947 that the Air Force got some of this stuff too when he didn't talk about it. And so that's the story of Corso, guys. And all of that coincidence plus the idea that he had contact and this new world, if you can take it, it's just anchored in my mind.
Yeah, it seems like that same message keeps coming out from the different contactees and people who've done like, hardcore research, that it's like, there's this new world you guys can create. You just have to take it. And it's a constant message. Do you feel like your life at some point was kind of like predestined? Because the story you're telling us, it almost seems like you really didn't have a choice.
Is that how your life is too? You're not going to get away with asking me that without as a journalist asking you that.
It kind of seems like when it comes to certain things, especially in the ufology and the spiritual things, it almost seems like, for example, like me and Tom coming together was kind of, I wouldn't say forced together, but just came together very easy. And in the whole, just everything up to my life is like one thing after another leads into the next thing.
Well, see, Ramon, you just answered the question. You guys, of course. I mean, if you're plugged in, what I call plugged in, but I didn't know I was plugged in because I met Corso in 1997, so do the math. It was a while ago. And so what the problem was, and he only lived for a year. So, he only lived for about a year after that. From the day that I met Alan Hynek and all of that, I mean, somehow I was drafted into doing this. But I think that it's been, and you've got to understand when I tell you this, it's been very difficult for a woman to get into this field. Almost impossible because they're not taken seriously. The people that I, even in Italy, met said, how in the world does she get in the door? How does she get these stories? They just, it's a male-dominated world. I just saw the International UFO Congress in Phoenix, Arizona. There were something like 9 men and 1 woman speaking. And I thought, whoa, how do they do that? I mean, don't they realize there's a series of very, very intelligent international women, too, that do this work? So it's been really, really, really hard.
Yeah. We have to toot our own horn there. We've gotten compliments. If you look at all our past guests, we have a nice majority, not majority, but a nice balance of men and women. Because like you said, there's so much information coming from both sides. And you are right. The ufology is so male dominated. Do you think that's because the men just, don't want to let the women in, or there's just not enough women in the scene?
Most of the women in the scene are contactees. They're not investigative journalists like me. I mean, there's Linda Howe. I'm there. Leslie Kane is another one. In Italy, there's Lavinia Pallotta. And in Turkey, there's Esen Sekarara. Now, I just had a conference with Starworks because I created a company just to bring women in Chicago, and she blew everybody away. She's the only one that got a standing ovation. She's a researcher from Turkey, but she went and listed all the Turkish cases, which were amazing. But at the end, she turned around and she said, "This is more about us than it is about ufology." And then she said that we have to get into the consciousness studies, and everybody she's just so far ahead of anybody as far as leading one thing, leading into the other. So, I think the majority of women today probably are contactees, but I would love to work with women journalists. I want to tell you, just I don't know if you saw the other day when Barbara Walters retired, but I completely cried my eyes out because Oprah Winfrey said to her, "We're standing on your shoulders. You have broken the glass ceiling for women anchors and women news ladies." And I thought, whoa, that's how I feel. I will do anything it takes to encourage women to get into the research part of this, because I think that makes a fine balance.
It is, and I just absolutely love the way women approach these subjects. We probably talk to more women along the consciousness field, in the consciousness field on our show than within the UFO field. But just the way they put it across, it has a completely different flavor than the way a man would put something across. And that's definitely needed because we have both sides of the coin here, and for us to get the full picture and to be able to fully understand what's going on here, we've got to have both sides of that coin.
Well, I herald you for doing that, because there are so many amazing women out there, and I don't feel it's competition. This is one of the problems with the whole field. There's a lot of backbiting and arguing, and I've got the truth kind of thing, and and debunking. I think we in our field, our own people debunk everybody. We don't need to go. You put a story out there, and next thing you know, somebody's saying, "Oh yeah, that's not real," and I feel like saying, "And how many books have you read? And did you go there? And have you talked to the witness?" Especially when it comes to pictures, I can't tell you the hell I've gone through over the Billy Meyer case, because when I lived in Italy, I did go there. I did research that. I spoke 5 hours to Wendell Stevens in the Tucson airport. And that case is real. The Japanese bought everything because the Japanese, when they get in there, they get the real stuff. They're able to buy it. They have the money, and they know the real cases. So, Billy Meyer's movies, his 16 millimeter movies, and his photographs and the metal and everything else he got went to the Japanese.
Do you know who brought that here in Japan?
Yeah, it was Nissan. Was it Nissan Corporation? Was it?
Really?
It was. Yeah, I got that. I've got everything here because I got it in the book. They went there and they took everything. They bought the movies. The movies are incredible because you see the UFO over the what do you call it, the highway. I mean, there's no way there's a fishing pole over highway with a craft. The cars are going underneath. The thing is just right over the cars and the highway. Plus, I spent some time with the people there at, as you met Rudy, where he is, and he's just getting sick and tired because he's sick and tired like everybody else is of our own people to debunk things, and you can't go, oh, that's all CGI or all that. Photoshop. There was no Photoshop back then. Photoshop, if you know, started in 1990. So he's not Photoshopping anything. We don't have the program. So, and then I have letters that I got from Italy that NASA was very interested in the Billy Meyer case. They're very interested on the side in a lot of this stuff. So letters that are signed by people that, had seen his pictures. So, again, we need to not debunk until we, number one, question the person in person, not on the phone, so you can see their body language. Then do a real good, investigation of the case. And it can't be your opinion, because for me, research is not your opinion. Research is like Ellen Hynek used to do it, get out there and field research and take hours and speak to everybody and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I end every show with a quote from Albert Einstein: "The condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance." And there's way too much of that. The armchair debunkers out there, for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know why they do it, because what it does, often I say, everybody says, oh, the government's keeping the secret. I go, no, it isn't. The people are keeping the secret. If there's enough people arguing, about stuff and nobody knows what in the world's happening, then nobody's going to buy into the serious study of this stuff. And I think My personal way of dealing with it is because I'm a teacher. I'd give an F to anybody that did internet research. You got to go to the source. I'd give them an F on a paper if you wrote me a paper and you didn't speak to the original witness. So I guess my way of dealing with things is how your teacher would do it.
Yeah, there's that was one of the cases that I looked at the most when I first started looking into the whole UFO thing before I started doing the radio show. But there was only like one thing that bothered me, which was the picture of what was her name, the Plagiarin girl.
Yeah, ask it. But see, you got to know that Billy Meyer is Swiss, and he's not watching. He's not watching Dean Martin's Gold Diggers. So that when he took the picture of Ascot,
Yeah.
yeah, he took the picture of Ascot. He took the picture of Ascot, and she has ears down to her neck. If you look where the ears are, because I did two other cases in Europe that have Polaroids of beings. And the commonality is that the ears are really big. They attach down farther on their neck, and Ascot's does. And the thing is that just logically, Billy Meyer is not watching the Dean Martin show, and he's not seeing the gold diggers. He doesn't even know who the gold diggers are. He's a farmer. And so what happened is that in those days, because everybody made a pilgrimage there, and the roads were filled with people going up there, I think the Swiss government found a way to stop it by getting a picture of a girl to pose like Ascot that was a gold digger on the Dean Martin show. But that isn't even logical, because I don't even know if he had a color television, let alone, take a picture of the gold digger on the Dean Martin show. I think that could have been done after, just to debunk the picture of Ascot. But in the meantime, I've done many, many cases with Polaroid pictures of human-type aliens. And
Yes, you have.
Yeah, the Maurizio Cavallo case. And just to tell you, it's so hard on me that I had to go back there 3 times before I even decided to do it. I just couldn't do it the first time. I mean, it's like, it's very difficult. And I say, because it's just so difficult for me to look at contact, and I don't have any contact experience. So when someone is telling me that he's been taken aboard ship and he's met these beings from Clarion, and there's all kinds of different kinds of beings there, they look all kinds of different kinds of ways, including, and his main contact looks like a male model, and his name is Suel, and he met him in a cafe in Rome. And Suel works among us. And then Suel also is on the craft, because I heard a tape recording of Suel addressing Maurizio on the tape recorder turned on by itself while they were playing cards in his house. The tape recorder turns on by itself, and Suel is giving him a message. Now, this is reminiscent of the contact of the 50s, which I'm writing about right now. Because in the 50s, when the human-type aliens met Van Tassel, Adamski, and Menger, they said they were from Venus, but I bet they just said that. I'm not sure they were from Venus, but that's what they told the contactees. The way they used to communicate with these people is with crystal radios, and voice would come over the crystal radio, and that's how they would communicate, because they could pick up the radio and talk to him like that. So when Suel did that to Maurizio, where he had the tape recorder come on in, and I have the recording of his voice, and he's also walking around among us, that I've got a whole new realm to study. I've got to know. I mean, if he's walking around among us in Rome, and so are the others, there's a bunch of them here walking around among us. Right. It's just that we don't recognize it. And I'll tell you a really quick story. I interviewed Tim Good. I just mentioned his book, Earth and Alien Enterprise. I think people should buy that book. But anyway, he said that when he was in London, he was sitting in a lobby of a hotel, and he saw a man that just, for him, just he didn't look like other people. He was well dressed. He was reading the paper. So mentally, psychically said to the guy, if you are not from this planet, take your right index finger and put it on the left side of your nose. Mentally. Yeah. And the guy did it. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
And I was envious. I said, "Oh my God, I love to do that." It's like,
Yeah.
I want to go around now, and anybody that I think is ET, I'm going to say, show me a sign.
Hmm.
Yeah, I spoke to a contactee here one time, and he was telling me that they're just all over the place, and they like you said, they look just as different as we do amongst each other. So, for example, even Billy Meyer was had mentioned about like black aliens and Asian aliens, and they'll go to those regions or go to a place like United States where they can blend in, and sometimes even have to wear like dentures because they have like double rows of teeth, or their teeth are just so different from ours, or contacts because their eyes are completely different.
Well, yeah. I mean, I believe that. There's a book. I give you a list of books, you guys. There's a book called Rachel's Eyes. It's by Helen Luttrell, and her daughter was blind, and the government put this hybrid girl named Rachel into a community college in Sacramento. And she roomed with Helen's daughter, who was blind, so she couldn't see her. But Helen saw her, and this girl would wear a bandana, gloves, and dark glasses all the time. And her food would be shipped in because it was like baby food. And she actually enrolled in the community college. And this was an experiment the government was doing. Evidently, this girl was one of the survivors of a crash in Four Corners near the corner of Colorado. So that book fascinated me so much that I went to interview her. So, anybody that I'm fascinated with that I want to know more of, I get on in a car, on a plane, and go see them. This cannot be done on the phone.
Hmm. Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about a person-to-person communication over even Skype. I mean, there's a different energy that's along with it. You can read the body language and yeah.
And you have dinner with them, and then you watch their family. You try to figure out if they could be lying. But guys, do you understand how much money out of my pocket I've spent to do this? I
Oh,
have
yeah.
not had any
Yeah.
sponsors. And my kids think I am nuts. They want me to go to the Caribbean and hang out at a hotel, and because I'm retired, I shouldn't be spending money this way. But it's part of the research, and I have spent thousands of dollars to do this field research. But then that's how Hynek used to do it.
Right.
Yeah. Out of out of all the ufologists that I think you're the one that have actually like interviewed so many different people who have contact with so many different species. Like there's names I've heard from drop from your mouth that I've never heard drop from anybody else's mouth. Like the Clarion, for example, the picture of the that you have on your website, the Clarion girl.
Did you see that? The little girl has. You got to look at her
That's an
face.
amazing picture.
That she's got ears, big ears. So that's why I tend to believe the Ascot picture. I think that they hoaxed the one after. They tried to make a picture to look like her after it. But the thing is that I see these are Italian cases. And there's some, now I've gone to Latin America. Okay, so this Ramon, you may understand this because I'm studying human type aliens, and they stopped coming here in 1960. Then the Betty and Barney Hill case came, and now we got stamped on our foreheads the alien gray is the stereotypical mascot of ufology. So all the profile pictures on I got one this morning of human looking in a mirror, and a gray is looking back at him. And I'm going, are you guys really thinking that the universe is populated with grays? But then you have to look at the Vatican coming out saying the alien is your brother and sister, and they're not talking about grays. They're, when Father Funes came out, when Father Funes came out and said, look, is that against your religion to believe in ET life? And of course, God's going to create a whole bunch of us. There's like 50 million different kinds of butterflies, and there's only one kind of human. it's like ignorance. It's like I can't believe it. I'm going on Facebook seeing all these profile gray people, thinking, why don't you put your real picture there so we can see who you really are, and stop identifying the gray with ufology. Yes, there were a group of them. Probably they took DNA. They probably did it because if we destroy ourselves, they can reseed this planet with some humans. I mean, there's different reasons. It doesn't have to be a fear-based, terrifying scenario so nobody goes there. But Colonel Corso told me, and so did Clifford Stone, and I'm very close to Cliff Stone because I published his book, that in their work, they had found between 52 and 57 different races were visiting the Earth with different agendas.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't. Let me put it a different way. I don't understand when certain quote unquote ufologists come out and say like, oh, they're all bad, and I've even heard some say they're demons, and I really don't understand that concept. That's I don't know if you can call that just racist or speciest.
Yeah, you can call it racist. I mean, I got
or the opposite
alien racism. Yeah.
Yeah, or the opposite where they say they're all good. Like,
right.
I look at them as humans. Not every human person you meet is a bad person, but not every human person you meet you want to be around. So yeah. I would, take that the same out there.
But see, that's because of your background too. I looked at what happened in the 50s and why they went away, and then I interviewed 4 people in South. I interviewed Sisto Paz in Peru, Luis Fernando Mostacio in Bolivia. I just interviewed Ricardo Gonzalez, who I'm bringing up to Roswell to speak, and also Alfonso Vela, who is down in Peru also. I interviewed them because they're having meetings with human-type aliens as we speak. And in Sisto Paz's case, he brings a journalist with him. He's never alone. And so when he meets these people, he's got other people with him. So it's real. And Ricardo Gonzalez, his contact is named Antaral, and he is like very muscular. And what happens is that mentally he's told to go out into the desert. These guys go out into the desert. The craft lands. Some kind of mist goes, like a dome is created. I don't know, they need another atmosphere or whatever. And like Ricardo will go into the mist. It's called the Zendra. And he'll get a message. And I said to Ricardo, how come they're going to Latin America and they're not coming back to the United States at all? And what he said is, well, he said the United States is interested in one thing, the craft, the technology. They are interested in making a connection with humans so that humans can evolve. And they can only make it with the heart. That's the only thing they have in common, because certainly they didn't go to school. They didn't do all the things we did. They weren't brought up the way we were. So that being has nothing in common except his heart. And he says that the Latin Americans and South Americans have a great heart connection. So with the heart connection is how they can connect with you. And that ain't going to happen up here. I mean, they're going to get the craft and they want to know how it works. And then they'll put you in, some at Area 51 at S4 and just, and try to, examine you and, just like E.T., poor E.T., the movie E.T.,
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Is the radar still an issue for their craft?
No, that was the old days. We had this really, really powerful radar because if you consider that it was right near where Trinity Site White Sands was, where the atomic bomb was being tested. At that time, the scientists and everything were really worried that the Russians would get hold of this idea. So they were, the radar. And I didn't realize this until I did some research, but it was also portable radar. It was moved. It was like, I don't know if it was on wheels or what, but it was moved around, and it was all in the New Mexico area. So if we have any crashes like Virginia, you've heard of the Virginia case, right? The Virginia case, the Virginia Brazil case. That case, had to do with the little being. It wasn't gray. It had like reddish skin. And that being, that was a crash because I think they brought it down. I think that there's able to shoot it down, shoot some of this stuff down. Or in
Oh, with the three girls
yeah,
seeing
the
him?
girls, yeah, that they thought it was the devil. You know, you said some people think they're demons. You got to understand, because we just talked about this. If you don't have a box to put it in, you got to use the box you got. And if the box is a religious one, you're going to put it there. I mean, you have to put it somewhere in your brain. So people that believe in good, good and evil, angels and demons are going to put it there because that's the only place they can put it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, there's some really old stories too of certain crashes, like 1800 in Texas, and there's the other one in the 1500s in Germany, where they buried the bodies. The one in Germany was terrible because they thought it was demons and they burned them at the stake, and supposedly buried their remains under the church there. I forgot where in Germany it was. I
Well,
don't know.
look, yeah, because of the way they look. But what about the ones that look like us?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure they were there at the time too. So maybe the one. I mean, on the other hand, maybe the ones that look like us became great teachers for us. I mean, maybe some of our great teachers were ETs. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, well, we've burned up this first hour already, and what's going on for you? You got the conferences coming up, and I'd like to throw out that website for the online university you're working with and everything.
Yeah, I'm going to teach a course in the human type alien scenario, and I'm going to cover Latin America, all the cases in Italy, and the early cases, Menger, Howard Menger, Van Tassel, Adamski, the early cases here in the United States in the 1950s. And that's with Dr. Michael Sala's Exopolitics Institute. And he gives a certificate on exopolitics if you take, you do the whole course bit. And the way I do it online. I give materials to react to. People have to write essays, and I just have a dialogue with them. So that's what I do in the teaching field. In the research field, I'm on my way to Roswell. As I told you yesterday, I want to talk to Frank Kimmler, who is a metallurgist who did the Roswell debris field, who worked on the Roswell debris field, and I want to meet up with Clifford Stone, and I published his book. He did crash retrieval. And then I have a conference. I'm bringing back Laughlin, Nevada, that for 19 years was run by Bob and Terry Brown. So I'm bringing that back because I want to go into more metaphysical look at ufology. It can't be all sciences. I want to go into the metaphysics part. So I have Grant Cameron, who's going to cover consciousness. I have Colin Andrews, whose new book I just mentioned, The Edge of Reality, deals with consciousness. I have Jaime Maussan from Mexico. I have Stephen Bassett, because I was present at the citizen hearing. He was amazing. I mean, the whole thing was powerful. So I have Joe Buckman, who was the moderator of the citizen hearing. I have Andrea Perrone, who wrote the books of which The Conjuring was made up of, because her house was haunted. So, and she's really into the dimensionality of ETs and hauntings and the paranormal. So Laughlin, the way it's going to be brought back November 14, 15, and 16, is going to be a combination of ufology, paranormal, and consciousness studies.
Wow, nice.
Yeah,
that one sounds like a good one.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're doing that because I don't know, it's not even a ufology thing. I think it's like a human thing. We like to separate everything, and it's not a separation. It needs to be brought together. So I'm so glad, because it's nuts and bolts over there, spirituality over there. And I find it hilarious when I meet someone in the ufology and they don't even touch the consciousness thing, and then vice versa. The people into spirituality is like, oh, I'm into the spiritual thing, not aliens. And it's like, what? It's like it's all one thing.
Yeah,
it is. It's all one thing. But you're pretty evolved. You've done your homework to be able to say that. I'm going to always use that as a teacher. You can't take a third grader and bring them to 12th grade, Ramon. So what we can do is encourage them to read,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One step at a time.
And Tom and you are doing a great job because you this is information, this is media, this is getting it to the people.
Yeah. So
okay.
We're gonna finish this hour and we're gonna come back with the second hour and make sure you guys join us. And I want to give you guys a great thank you, even if you are not a member or do not want to become a member. Still, a great thank you for listening, even just the first hour. We highly appreciate it.
All right. And if you're listening out there on one of those other medias, the iTunes, the Vimos, the YouTubes, et cetera, and would like to check out the second hour, pop on over to www.the100thmonkeyradio.com, and you can find it all there. See, this is show number 199 on the website, isn't it, Ramon?
I think it's 198. We're close there to 200 episodes.
Getting there. All right, guys, we'll see you in the second hour. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
Namaste, my friends.
Meditators, global thinking gladiators, glowing tubes that mesmerize, netting minds like butterflies, hapless lying in the night like moths misled into a light. Information overload, trust me, then do what you're told. Tell me who you think I am.